Today we're welcoming back Arthur Brooks. It's been decades since Arthur's been on. He's a Harvard professor, PhD social scientist, best-selling author, writes at The Atlantic, and the latest book is From Strength to Strength: Finding Success, Happiness, and Deep Purpose in the Second Half of Life, which you'll at some point in the next decade you will enter, I guess.
Yeah. If I'm not in the second half of life now, it means I'm going to be living at least 116 years. And that, I don't know. I got the data. Seems unlikely.
Well, aspirationally in the Jewish faith, we say 120, so 60 is
Yeah,
the
yeah, may
halfway.
you live to 120. And by the title of the book, by the way, is Michael El Chayel, which from the 84th Psalm. May you go from strength to strength. That's where the title of the book comes from.
That's well, there's really something for everyone. I mean, let's zoom out a little bit. The mindfulness space, the happiness hacking space, it's become so riddled with newsletters, self-help books, hacks, the top 3, the best 10, all these sort of different things. And
Yeah.
I get that they're all kind of pointing to what it seems to me is that a lot of people are experiencing some kind of fundamental absence of something. And there's different ways that we can deal with that, either by sort of workshopping and hacking. For some, it's finding religion or higher purpose or faith or whatever the case may be. What's your overall assessment of how this space has become so huge in the last 10 years?
Well, to begin with, it's the reason that we haven't mastered it. I mean, look, we all want to be happy and we're not. So obviously there's something wrong here. And part of the reason is because Mother Nature is just lying to us all the time. The biggest mistake that we all make is thinking that if we actually get what we want, we'll be happy. That's completely incorrect. And it's based on the false assumption that Mother Nature cares if you're happy. See, Mother Nature is encouraging you to accumulate money and power and pleasure and fame. And therefore, and since you want to be happy and you want those things, you make the connection of thinking, if I get those things, I'm going to be happy. Well, that's Mother Nature's joke. She basically wants you to pass on your genes, David. She wants you to have 75 children by getting as rich and famous as possible. She does not care. She doesn't care at all whether you're happy. And that's the big mistake that we make. The truth is that being happy requires that we do things that are contrary to our basic nature a lot. And most people don't know how to do that. And most people don't want to do that. And that's the reason that we still haven't mastered this art.
Does this relate in some way to the concept of the hedonic treadmill, where you identify what you think is sort of like an endpoint at which you will achieve some level of happiness or satisfaction? Then you get there and it turns out it doesn't really look the same now that I'm here, and you kind of move goalposts. Is that related to the same desire that maybe is not what we think it is?
Very much so. Happiness basically comes from three things. There's sort of three macronutrients in happiness, kind of like food is protein, carbohydrates, and fat. Happiness is enjoyment, meaning, and satisfaction. Those are the three parts of happiness. You have to have all three. And all three are hard. All three actually require work, and they require habits, not hacks. They require that you take these things seriously. They require knowledge, and so the last of those, satisfaction, is the one that you're talking about. Satisfaction is the joy that you got from a job well done or getting a reward that you really wanted. Mother Nature tells you that if you get that thing, that the joy that you get is going to last forever. So Mick Jagger sings, "I can't get no satisfaction, but I try and I try and I try." Now, the truth is that you can get satisfaction. The problem is that you can't keep satisfaction. That's what you call the hedonic treadmill. The science behind that is a thing called homeostasis. That's where the brain always goes back to its baseline. So if you, and your body does too, by the way, if your pulse goes up after being on the treadmill and then after you get off, it goes back down to your pulse, your regular pulse rate, that's so you don't die. That's homeostasis. But emotionally, our homeostasis means we can't stay out of our groove by being happier than normal because we won't be ready for the next set of circumstances. In the Pleistocene, we'd be somebody's lunch fast if we weren't ready to react emotionally to the next set of circumstances. That's homeostasis. But we don't know it, because Mother Nature is lying to us and saying that new car smell is going to last forever, that the sunshine in California is going to make you happy forever, that new romance is going to give you a thrill forever, that my students at the Harvard Business School, when they get that great job, it's going to be awesome forever because they got all this money. No, you'll like it when you hear about the raise, but you won't even care about it when it hits your check because of the hedonic treadmill. So you need to hack that. You need new habits to get beyond that. And that's what I write about in the work that I do. Look, the self-improvement space is not very scientific. If you really want to be happier, you got to do habits, you got to do the work, and you have to share it with other people. You need to become a real student of this stuff, and then you truly can be happier.
You mentioned there's so many of these different instances that can be kind of delved into more and researched more. One about the idea of if I move to a place with better weather, I'll be happier year round because when I'm there for a little bit, it seems so great.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of interesting work on that, and one study I read says that it is true for like a couple years, and then it just kind of becomes the status quo, and then it almost starts to become interesting to think about places that have seasons, that have winter, and all of a sudden
Yes.
that kind of becomes more appealing. There's also the counterfactual of the in terms of self-reported happiness. Places with pretty crummy weather and cold temperatures are regularly at the top of self-reported happiness as well, which should make us it should make us say what, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, nobody says I want to move to Denmark for the weather,
Right.
but Denmark comes out on top of these happiness scales and comparisons of people in different countries. Now, those actual comparisons are nonsense because you can't really compare people in different countries who have different cultures, but you can compare people within regions.
Mm.
And indeed, you find that in a lot of places like the upper Midwest, people actually they tend to be just as happy or happier than people in California. And the main reason is because weather isn't what brings you happiness. What brings you happiness is your faith or life philosophy, your transcendent sense of what the world is all about, whether it's religious or not, your family life, your friendships, and work that serves other people. In other words, it's all about love. And in a lot of places in the upper Midwest, they have better communities and healthier families than they have in places in Southern California. The key thing to keep in mind is your brain says to get that, unless you have seasonal affective disorder or something. I'm talking about people who don't, and it's only about 7 or 8% of people have that. But if you don't have that, your brain's saying you'll be happier in the sunshine, and you will enjoy it. Of course, I mean, I've lived in Southern California periodically throughout my life, but the real happiness bump that comes from happiness will wear off in 6 months, and the taxes are forever.
Mm.
So choose wisely.
Well, so that's where your former professional conservative career comes out for sure. Which, by the way, I want to link back to all of this in a bit. So, what are you talked about? There are things that you can do to kind of hack these tendencies, for lack of a better term. So, what are they?
Well, so the key thing is it's not hacks, it's habits. That's
Habits.
an important thing to keep in mind because everybody wants a shortcut. And the world is all about hacks. You know, I'm gonna hack into somebody's system. I'm gonna hack my metabolism. I'm gonna hack my sleep and all that. And almost anybody who's promising you hacks is selling you a bill of goods. Anything that's really going to do good for you requires that you change your life. You're going to change the way that you live. You know, you can't hack your weight because what you're going to do is quickly lose weight on some weird diet and gain all the weight back and then some. If
Yeah.
you really want to be healthier, anyway, you know all that, and people kind of know about that. So that's the key thing to keep in mind. The 4 happiness habits, as I mentioned before, are faith, family, friendship, and work that serves other people. And so those are the things really to be spending time on. Now, to be sure, people have different metabolisms. You know, I talked about the 3 macronutrients, but there's also metabolisms. So David, you might just be a naturally happier person than me because 50% of your baseline happiness is genetic.
Hmm.
You know, I don't want it to be true, but that's very important information because that's why your habits are that much more important to sort of epigenetically help you to express greater happiness, notwithstanding your genes. A quarter of your happiness is circumstantial, but because of homeostasis and the hedonic treadmill, the circumstances don't last, good and bad. You know, even if bad things happen to you, almost always that will wear away pretty quickly, and the good things will too. The quarter that really matters is the 4 habits. So the first one is the faith thing. And again, that your results may vary. You got to figure out what that means to you. If you're not a traditionally religious person, then what we're talking about is a transcendent view of life. Everybody needs to understand their values and live according to them. People need a contemplative practice. People need to surround themselves with literature that's wise, for example. So I recommend that people read, I don't care, the Stoic philosophers or the holy books or just something smart 15 minutes a day, that they engage in a practice of nature or prayer or meditation, and that they actually think very clearly about their values so they can get that first pillar, that faith pillar in order.
Right.
Family life is unbelievably important. I mean, I'm sure you join me in regretting the fact that 1 in 6 Americans is not talking to a family member today because of politics, which is it's just like stepping over $100 bills to get to nickels, man. I mean,
Right.
it is insanity to do that. I mean, I know Aunt Marge is in pain because at Thanksgiving, she can't stop talking about Trump. But man, if you call Aunt Marge at 2 a.m. with a crisis, she's picking up the phone, and all
Right.
your buddies on whatever the Democracy Underground, they're like, "Who are you?" That's important that we keep that in mind. And then when we talk about friendships, I mean, people can't see us right now, but I'm wearing a T-shirt that says "Real friends beat deal friends." And for the strivers out there, the super strivers, it's all deal, no real. We got to get that in order. And finally, your work. I mean, we all work, and most Americans like their jobs well enough. The key thing to loving your job and having it bring joy to you is not, I mean, it's got to pay well enough. Obviously, you got to pay your rent, but it's all about earning your success and
Mm.
serving other people. And, that's where it really comes in. And so it's love of the divine, whatever that means to you, love of your family, love of your friends, and loving others through your work. Love, 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 and more love.
If people didn't know your backstory, I think the way you talk about these issues, people would be surprised that you were sort of like professional right winger for a while, running the American Enterprise Institute. And if people check out our conversation 15 years ago or however long ago it was, they might be surprised to hearing you talk this way. Is that wrong, or do you find that what you're doing now does appeal more to people on the political left than the right?
It appeals to everybody because everybody wants to be happy.
Mm.
I have a completely nonpartisan audience. And I write for the Atlantic, and my personal. I mean, look, everybody's got their political views, and one of the biggest problems that we have for happiness is in America is we're too identified. Our identities are too political. I mean, David, you and I have 95% in common, and the 5% that's not is a bunch of political views that would be relatively trivialized if you were pulling me out of a burning car.
Absolutely.
It's super important that we not get too hung up on these types of things. And furthermore, that we can love and respect each other, not despite our political differences, but because of our political differences. As far as I'm concerned, the most interesting people are the ones who disagree with me, not the ones who agree with me on every matter. I mean, none of my kids vote like me. I don't care. I mean, it's like all three of my kids voted for Trump, and so
Is
that's
that
not my.
true?
Oh yeah, it's not my thing. But it's let's bring it on. Give me your reasons. I want to hear it. Is the whole thing. Look, we got to
Yeah.
love each other more. Is the bottom line.
I think that makes sense to a lot of people. I think where it becomes more difficult is when the differences are directly hostile to who we feel we are, right? So differences between me and a white nationalist, for example. Okay, I mean, we start to get, I think, into that. Maybe it's less common, fortunately, but those differences are harder to overcome.
They're harder to overcome, but we're having a tendency today because we're being manipulated by people who are making a big buck on our hatred, and us thinking that differences of ideology are actually in differences of existence.
Hmm.
And that's a big problem that we have. Somebody who disagrees with the way that I live my life is not denying my right to exist. Those are two very different things. And the problem is we become too disengaged from our common story and too, I think, involved in our differing identities. Identities are like, I'm this and you're not, so you're not in my in group, you're in my out group. And you and I, as I said before, have a 90-something% overlapping common story that is the basis of our brotherhood.
Sure.
I mean, you and I are just, I mean, it's super important that we see each other as with the equal dignity radically. And then if you disagree with me really strongly about something, that's not my denying your right to exist. And yet a lot of scholars and a lot of politicians are trying to effectively, let me put not too fine a point on it. A lot of people my age, a lot of baby boomers are trying to conscript a lot of child soldiers into their culture war by convincing a lot of young people to be really hateful and afraid of people who say one particular thing or who have particular moral views as if they wanted you dead, which isn't true on the right or the left.
Yeah, I generally tend to agree with that. I think that where we get into a riskier space is when we minimize that there's lots of people out there who maybe they don't want to deny your right to exist. Like maybe they're not talking about killing those with whom they disagree, but they want to deny them basic rights. And then there's a question as to where do you draw the line as to when are these just casual differences which we can easily overcome?
Yeah, no, for sure. And if somebody wants to deny your basic rights, I mean, you can see that on both sides constantly. When I saw our Senator Elizabeth Warren talking about crisis pregnancy centers last week, saying we need to shut them all down,
Mm.
and you could take that and say, oh, therefore, under the circumstances, there's nothing for us to talk about. We need to break away as a nation. There's no way that we can live together. Or we could say, people say these things, they talk in this particular way. Elizabeth Warren actually is a good senator who wants to represent me. She does a lot of things that are right, and not taking the most radical thing that somebody says and interpreting it in the most radical way possible. We got to be more charitable to each other is the bottom line, I think.
That is a hard for me to disagree with. That's for sure. We've been speaking with Arthur Brooks. His latest book is From Strength to Strength: Finding Success, Happiness, and Deep Purpose in the Second Half of Life. Arthur, great speaking to you again. I really appreciate it.
You too, neighbor. We're both Massachusetts natives, although I know our audience is far and wide. You're reaching even outside American borders these days, aren't you?
These days, yes. And there are many people in Scotland resisting it. I will tell you. We're not. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, we are. We are. And mostly U.S., I'm sorry, English speaking countries, but big in Germany, I will tell you.
That's great to hear. I'm glad to hear it. Congratulations on your success. You deserve it.